加拿大最糟糕的 Prime Minister in an entire century has finally resigned. And if you want to know just how 糟糕 this fool was, imagine Kamehameha Harris's level of incompetency and multiply it by 9,000.
It's over 9,000! What, 9,000?
差不多啦. Now, I know a lot of people, when they think of woke mind virus, they think of America. But by Canadian standards, America is far right. Real talk. Canada is the center of the extreme 政治正确 in the entire galaxy, yo. And it's all because of the Prince of Woke, aka Justin Trudeau, aka Trudeau. So, 准备在爆米花 because you're about to understand what real extreme 政治正确 is. You're also going to get a very polite lesson in what real hypocrisy looks like. So let's kick off the new year by properly saying 大吉大调. We've been radio silent because Aoi and I took a very much needed vacation, but we back, son. 新年快乐. And as you can see, the new year has already gotten off to a proper bang, although we can't talk about that because we'll get censored. But in other news, just 2 days ago, two very important things went down. First, Trump officially won the presidency. That's right, on January 6th, US Congress certified the election results, and the person who had to stand there in front of everyone and say those words was our good old friend Kamehameha Harris.
The votes for President of the United States are as follows. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 312 votes. Kamala D. Harris
You get nothing. You lose.
The DNC, now regretfully representing woke culture in America, has now officially become the Ops, proving for the last time in 2025 that if you go woke, you go broke.
So last night over dinner, I told my kids about the decision that I'm sharing with you today. I intend to resign as party leader, as prime minister.
And to find proof of this tired, worn-out phrase, look no further than America's neighbor to the north, Canada, because this Guy Fawkes V for Vendetta looking motherfucker is responsible for all of it. Now, in order to understand just how bad Trudeau messed everything up, we first need to go back in history and take a look at his father, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, aka Pet. Now, in a lot of families and to a lot of people, a pet is a big part of their life. To some, they might even be their favorite part of their life. Canada, Pierre Elliott Trudeau was exactly that. Back in the day, so many Canadians loved this fool so much, they even had a period known as Trudeau Mania.
Justin Trudeau has been in the public eye since birth, with his father Pierre Elliott Trudeau serving as Prime Minister at the time. The eldest of three boys, there was pressure on the young Trudeau to follow in his father's footsteps, but in a 1995 interview with Sandy Ronaldo,
Never.
he mentioned he would not pursue that path and instead became a teacher in BC.
Now, Pierre's son, Justin, at a young age was also beloved by Canadians, and there was a lot of expectation that he would follow in his father's footsteps.
Arguing the federal case at Collège Jean Brébeuf today was the son of its most famous alumnus.
Le Canada ne chie pas sur le Québec.
Justin Trudeau and his team were lonely voices for the Confederation. Lonely and unpopular. And his opponents, who want a fast track to independence, were cheered before they'd even uttered a word. Later, with a trademark family shrug, the young Trudeau said he doesn't much care what his peers think of his views.
Everyone's got peer pressure at this age. I mean, there's pressure to smoke, there's pressure to do all sorts of stuff. And I've never been affected by peer pressure. Never.
And you know, he was a good-looking guy, he was handsome, he was well-spoken, and at the beginning, Canadians really liked this dude.
So I clambered over the snowbank, boosted up to the window, rubbed my sleeve against the frosty glass to see inside, and as my eyes adjusted to the gloom, I saw a figure hunched over one of many work tables that seemed very cluttered. He was wearing a red suit with that furry white trim. And that's when I understood just how powerful and wonderful my father was. He left politics in '84, but he came back for Meech. He came back for Charlottetown. He came back to remind us of who we are and what we're all capable of. But he won't be coming back anymore. The woods are lovely, dark and deep. He has kept his promises and earned his sleep. Je t'aime, Papa.
Then, back in 2000, when Canada's pet passed away, Justin's very moving speech brought the nation to tears. And as a result, Justin inherited Canada's trust in the old Trudeau, giving him a very clear and sure path to eventually enter into Canadian politics.
My friends, we beat fear with hope. We beat cynicism with hard work. We beat negative, divisive politics with a positive vision that brings Canadians together.
At the young age of 43, Justin Trudeau became the second youngest prime minister in the country's history. Trudeau mania had officially returned. I mean, over 15 years, Pat did such a great job, so surely his young son Justin could do good as well, maybe even better, right?
Wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong.
What no Canadian expected was a young Trudeau turned out to be a rotten Trudeau. And at the beginning, Canadians ate it up, and now they are suffering from a severe case of lao-sai diarrhea, just on the brink of bankruptcy. So why don't you put aside that popcorn and get you a nice tall glass of alcohol, because 真的是代志大条。
Why should your right to freedom of speech trump a trans person's right not to be offended?
Because in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. I mean, look at the conversation we're having right now. You know, like you're certainly willing to risk offending me in the pursuit of truth. Why should you have the right to do that? It's been rather uncomfortable. You're doing what you should do, which is digging a bit to see what the hell's going on. But you're exercising your freedom of speech to certainly risk offending me. And that's fine.
I'm just trying to work that out. I mean,
ha, gotcha.
You have got me.
So in this story where Trudeau is definitely our supervillain, our superhero emerges in the form of a Kermit the Frog-voiced Jordan Peterson.
I'm not an admirer of hate speech laws. But that doesn't mean that I'm naive enough to think that there's no such thing as hate speech. So obviously, if you've ever been involved in an extremely serious argument, you know perfectly well that there's such a thing as hate speech, because you've probably uttered some. There's also no doubt that there are forms of speech that are utterly reprehensible, and some of those are actually already punished by law. You can't incite to violence, you can't libel someone, right? So we have some restrictions already on what's acceptable discourse. Whether it's the case, typically speaking, that some people have more privileged access to free speech than others, well, that's obviously the case. I mean, that's part of power. There's no doubt that these structural impediments to the free exchange of discourse exist. There's also no doubt, as you already laid out, that that's not in everyone's best interest, because what you want, if you have any sense in your society, and this is also why I think that we've put proper emphasis on the sovereignty of the individual, is that you want everyone's logos to have the opportunity to clarify the unknown and reconstitute the world. And if you shut that down, then you risk getting access to the unique insights that that individual might bring. Because I think the best thing to do is to leave free speech alone as much as you possibly can. Not because that will result in the perfect conditions for free speech, but because anything else that you're likely to do is going to make it worse rather than better.
This influential Canadian psychologist and professor laid his claim to fame almost 10 years ago when he single-handedly became the first to publicly stand up in front of cameras against woke culture and say very loudly, "No!" It all stemmed from a little old bill known as Canada's Bill C-16.
This is a message to all Canadians that we live in a time where discrimination in any form is completely unacceptable.
Now go back to 1972 when the CBC interviewed the first Canadian to undergo gender reassignment surgery.
To get back to your original question, why did I want to become a woman? Basically, I've always been a woman.
Today, the government says all Canadians should feel protected, free to be themselves, including this 10-year-old transgendered girl.
That we can live a more accepting, a more joyful life in the future.
Here's what's being proposed, including gender identity and gender expression in the Canadian Human Rights Act, meaning, for instance, you can't be fired, refused an apartment, or service at a restaurant for being transgender. Also, changes to the criminal code, adding hate crime sentencing when someone is targeted for their gender identity or gender expression. hate speech laws would also be updated.
And with that, Canada became the West's first English-speaking country to adopt hate speech laws protecting gender identity and gender expression. Simply put, if you talk shit about someone based on gender, that's considered hate speech.
What exactly are all those people who aren't thinking the same way as me saying? You said that there's a bunch of them and a bunch of groups, but you never said what they're saying precisely.
Well, I think our chair would rule me out of order if I proceed.
No, you're fine.
To read out what they're all saying. But in general, they say they oppose discrimination and harassment because of gender identity and gender expression. And then there's 3 pages, which I can share with you.
I oppose discrimination against gender identity and gender expression. That's not the point. The point is the specifics of the legislation that surrounds it and the insistence that people will have to use compelled speech. That's what I'm objecting to.
Now, although Bill C-16 might have had the best of intentions, the crazy part is it doesn't even clearly define gender expression or gender identity. Meaning, if you want to insult me based on gender by calling me a bitch-ass two-spirit polar bear, well, my good friend, you have now committed an act of hate speech. North Pole, nigga! And after the Trudeau administration passed Bill C-16, they tried to follow up with another act of legislative fuckery by introducing Bill C-63, which introduced the definition of hate in criminal law as emotion stronger than disdain or dislike that involve loathing or vilification, directed at individuals or groups based on prohibited grounds of discrimination.
And we view this bill, C-63, as posing a grave threat to all Canadians' right to free speech and a flourishing democracy. Part 1 of the bill imposes obligations on an operator to implement measures that are adequate to mitigate the risk that users will be exposed to harmful content. This includes content that foments hatred. This office will cost around $200 million over 5 years and impose fines up to the millions of dollars on platforms. It also creates a new standalone offense for any federal offense motivated by hatred, Section 320, which is also now punishable up to life.
And what makes it even crazier is there was a tiny little amendment to Criminal Code Section 810.012 that, I kid you not, introduced a minority report level legislation, which basically says that judges and attorneys can jointly impose bond conditions on Canadians they deem at high risk of posting hate speech online, even if the person has never committed any crime, whether hate-related or not. Translation, you run a high risk of doing some hateful shit, so we're gonna charge you beforehand, just in case.
Yes, I can definitely smell shite.
It's a bill that purports to protect children from online harm. And that's the beginning of the bill and the end of the bill. And the middle is you'll be able to take someone in front of a provincial magistrate because you're afraid that sometime in the next year they might commit a hate crime. You're afraid that someone might commit a hate crime and the judge agrees, then he can fit that person with an electronic surveillance bracelet and basically keep him in his house for a year.
No.
Yes, absolutely. 100. Read it yourself. Bill C-63. It's in the middle. Stop any communication on social media. Monitor all the social interactions in real life. And force the person to submit their body fluids on a regular basis for analysis for reasons that just are not specified in the bill.
Now, I have quite a few Canadian friends, and I have to say that compared to us Americans, they are polite as fuck, just like Taiwanese people. But the difference is they actually put politeness into law, because real talk, having to pay a bond on something that comes out of your mouth is on some next level shit, yo.
Maternal love is the love that's going to change the future of mankind. So we'd like you to look
we like to say people kind, not necessarily mankind, because it's more inclusive.
There we go, exactly.
And the person leading the charge, our good old young friend Trudeau. Over 9 years, the Prince of Woke quickly turned Canada into the epicenter of the woke shitstorm. Pretty soon, that stinky, smelly draft would shift its cold front to the borders of America.
Winter is coming.
Now, Canada's default factory settings of polite culture made them very accepting of woke culture, because after all, you don't want to offend anybody. And as a result, a lot of weirdly woke shit started happening.
A Canadian high school has sparked outrage over their decision to defend a transgender teacher who has gone viral for wearing enormous prosthetic breasts whilst teaching students.
Yes, well, viral photos and videos of the teacher, who calls themselves Kayla Lemino, shows them wearing bike shorts, a blonde wig, and tight tops over abnormally large prosthetic breasts in the classroom. Our TV viewers can see that teacher there.
Now, although things became wild and crazy, Canada didn't really seem to complain too much at first, and Trudeau went on about his business like this for 9 long years. And pretty soon, woke culture became Canadian culture. But as the phrase has been uttered time and time again, go woke, go broke!
everything we discussed was then leaked to the paper. That's not appropriate.
而且我们也不是那样进行的。
And that's not how the way the conversation was
如
conducted.
果有诚心，咱们就用一个互相尊重的态度来进行很好的沟通。
If there is
否则这个结果就不好说了。
if there is sincerity on your part,
free and open and frank dialogue, and that is what we will continue to have. We will continue to look to work constructively together, but there will be things we will disagree on, and we will have.
创造条件，创造条件。
Let's create the conditions first.
So I'm sure by now most of you have seen this clip, and it is still in as fuck. I mean, Winnie the Pooh punked this fool so bad, he didn't even wait for the translator to finish before he walked off. And Trudeau trudges off by himself like a little bitch. But hey, Trudeau 和蜂蜜不太会 mix 欸。 So the man known as the Prince of Woke is just that, a prince, but he for damn sure ain't no king. And it is very obvious when he stands next to other countries' king-like figures, and 明明跟不上. So Trudeau's woke reputation very quickly went broke, not just in Canada, but internationally.
We like to say people kind, not necessarily mankind.
And this guy who was the poster child for extreme 政治正确 and wokeness is about to have his image turned upside down.
This photo, newly discovered by Time magazine, shows him in brownface nearly 2 decades ago.
It was something that I didn't think was racist at the time, but now I recognize it was something racist to do.
The picture from the 2000-2001 yearbook of a private school where Trudeau was a teacher shows the then 29-year-old wearing a turban, robes, and dark makeup.
This is what hypocrisy looks like. And like that, the Prince of Woke's image went completely broke. 所以我们来理解清楚哦，你不能说 mankind 哦，但是如果你要 dress up 装 brown kind 没问题。
That don't make no sense.
Then there's the climate change goofiness.
The price on pollution is increasing along with the Canada carbon rebate.
The federal carbon tax has increased to $80 a ton with no sign the federal government intends to ease up. The Prime Minister emphasizing that as the tax goes up, so does the rebate, and any province opposed to it can implement their own carbon price, as BC and Quebec have done.
Every province has the opportunity to put forward its own plan, as long as they are fighting climate change to the same level that we're asking all other Canadians to do. That's what a federal backstop is.
Introduced in 2019, Trudeau's carbon tax went from just $20 a ton to $80 a ton in 2024. 差4倍.
This is roughly how much money Canada's federal government owed as of last year. 173,000,000,000,000. And that's what the federal government owes. The cost of servicing that debt, the interest every year, is about $46.5 billion.
Now, aside from the hypocrisy and the extreme wokeness, Trudeau's 9-year term as Prime Minister also saw the national debt jump up 85%. That is broke as fuck.
Canada's inflation rate held steady last month, and Statistics Canada says it came in at 6.9%, which is where it was in September. But gas prices went up, food prices did too. And staying with the affordability theme, your rent may have gone up as well. For example, look at this. On Prince Edward Island, the year-over-year increase is 70%. In Canada's biggest province of Ontario, it's up 17%. In Saskatchewan, the increase, 9%. And then if we go over to British Columbia, it's coming. There we go, there's Saskatchewan. Let's wait for British Columbia. Rent has gone up 16%.
So let's review, shall we? After Trudeau took office, all of Canada quickly went from polite to woke, meaning you can't say mankind, say mean things and you'll get fined, and food costs, housing costs, gas costs, the national debt all doubled, carbon tax quadrupled, leaving the woke path of the great nation of Canada dead ending at broke.
A new survey suggests Canadians are upset. An anger index poll conducted by Polaris Strategic Insights and released by the Toronto Star found Canadians have negative feelings towards the government. Of the 2013 Canadians surveyed, 48% reported being angry with Ottawa. 83% felt annoyed about inflation rates. 79% were annoyed by gas prices. Over half reported anger towards the state of the housing market.
But hey, although Trudeau is bad at management, at least he's a nice, polite person, right?
Wrong, 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 wrong.
The Commissioner's report this morning makes it very clear that I should have taken precautions and cleared my family vacation and dealings with the Aga Khan in advance. I'm sorry I didn't, and in the future, I will be clearing all my family vacations with the Commissioner's office.
But this, Trudeau became the first Canadian Prime Minister of this century to have violated the federal ethics laws of conflict of interest. Not once, but twice.
Hey there, how you doing?
I'm not shaking your hand, bro. You're a piece of man.
Why is that, sir? The entire country.
And now, those very polite Canadians have become very pissed Canadians, leaping at the chance to give good old Trudeau a piece of their mind.
Mr. Prime Minister, please get the
BC.
Have a wonderful day, man.
Yeah, you suck.
What about the 40% taxes I'm paying? And I don't have a doctor? I think you're only here for another year. We won't see you around probably another year.
Shame on you and your globalist counterparts. You're scumbag. You're an absolute scumbag.
It seems like only this guy could turn Canadians' culture of polite into one full of spite. And check this, compared to his American counterparts, with Sleepy Joe and Kamehameha Harris's approval ratings barely even touching 40%, Trudeau's approval ratings are even lower at 26%, and the support of his Liberal Party, 16%. So in less than 9 years, Trudeau has taught the world a very delightful lesson. You go woke, you go broke.
Now I know.
And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe!
Obviously, I'm not Canadian, and this is just a surface level explanation of what went down. So I would like to hear from those of you who are Canadian. How bad is Trudeau really? Leave a comment down below. Remember to like, subscribe, and I will see you on the flip side. Peace!